guys, it's a proud cat lover, and today I'm going to be giving you some little tips on handling your crested geckos. Now, of course, I would not suggest handling two at one time unless you're familiar with their behaviors, and if you know they're going to be aggressive towards each other, then definitely don't hold two at the same time. But I have here Blaze, which was my breeder female from last year, and I have Phoenix here, who is my little frog butt, and they share a tank, not together. It's a split tank, but they are in the same tank per se. They can smell each other and everything, but they just can't see each other or interact with each other. So I'm a little bit more comfortable holding them at the same time because they're used to each other's smells, and they're not going to be as nervous. Of course, I'm not going to let them interact, even though they're both girls, because I don't want them to become aggressive, because sometimes Blaze is known to bite other crested geckos on the face, because she bit Ember one time when I had them out and I was laying them roam around on my leg, and Blaze just ran up to Ember before I could grab her and bit her on the face. I'm like, okay, you two apparently don't get along. We're not going to have you two out anymore together. So, as long as I keep them separate, then they're okay, as long as they cannot interact with each other. So anyway, this is of course Blaze, and the main reason I'm making this video is I'm going to be talking about how to gently handle your crested gecko. So this, of course, is one of the ways that you can be real gentle, is just a little pet like this. Of course, if you have just recently got your crested gecko, I would not suggest doing this, because sometimes it can make them nervous if you're petting them. But of course, I've had Blaze for 3 years, so I'm not too worried about petting her. I've had Phoenix for almost 2 years, and she's definitely used to being handled now. When I first got her, I don't know if the person handled her too much, because she was definitely really jumpy. She didn't like being touched. She would literally hop everywhere she could. And she still is really jumpy, as where Blaze is just chilling and she's walking around everywhere. But when you're handling your crested gecko, you want to lift their body from underneath. So that's the best way to support them when you're picking them up. Or you can let them walk onto your hand by kind of pushing under their body like that. Now I'll get Phoenix for this one technique because she's a little bit more laid back at the moment, even though she's jumping everywhere, because Blaze is kind of getting a little unsettled. But when you go to pick up your crested gecko, and let's say they're on a branch, if you go from underneath their body, it's a lot easier to pick them up than, say, coming from top and trying to do this. Now, of course, they're used to that, because there have been times that they're in a hide and I'll come from the top like this. But when you're a new crested gecko owner and the crested gecko is new to you as well, they may not feel as comfortable you grabbing them from the top, and I prefer to scoop them up from the stomach. But the best practice to holding your crested gecko is hand walking, which is what Phoenix here is doing. And that's just kind of providing a spot for them to walk every time. Sometimes they'll jump, just like she did. But you definitely want to be able to learn your body language of your crested gecko, because each one's different. And of course, Phoenix, like I said, is my jumper. So she's always going to be moving on the on the run, because she's a very active crested gecko. She always is moving, as where, let's say, Ember or Blaze just kind of sits there and relaxes. Phoenix is the on-the-go girl. So, one other thing that I'll show you guys with Blaze, not really with Phoenix, because she can't. Because Phoenix is a frog butt, which means that she has no tail. And she came to me that way, and luckily all 3 of my other crested geckos, I have never had issues with a tail drop. Oh, you have to be really careful, because sometimes their claws will get stuck in your clothes, which just happened to Blaze here. My pants are kind of fluffy. But with crested geckos, you have to be especially careful with their tails, because if you were to grab their tail or yank on it or pick them up by the tail, which is no, you shouldn't do that with any animal in general. Their tails are very important because they're prehensile, which means that when they're trying to jump on a branch or something, let's say, and they landed in an odd position, they use their tail to balance themselves, and they also can grip things with their tails, as you can see what Blaze here is doing. And it's okay to put your finger there and bend the other hand down, because that's not pulling on the tail. That's just you kind of lowering your hand, and the crested gecko is responding by grabbing with its tail so it can balance itself, or if it feels that my hand is going to drop off, then it can grab with its hind legs too, like she just did. Obviously with her tail as well, because she gripped my back side of my hand. I need to grab Phoenix because she's trying to roam over here. I would also suggest not holding your crested geckos with other animals in the room, let's say cats or dogs, unless you're sure that the animal is not going to bother your crested geckos. Now, I have Blossom in the room. He's the only cat that likes to bother my crested geckos, and he's over here laying in a box, so that's why I'm not letting them go over. He isn't aggressive, but he does like to poke them, and I don't like that because it scares them. And obviously, for good reason. I mean, there's this giant animal swatting you on the face. So you definitely do not want to hold your crested geckos or any reptile that's fragile near an animal that could potentially harm them. Now, a lot of people find that, and I can't remember, I think I mentioned this earlier in the video, that you want to be confident of yourself and not be afraid when you're holding your crested gecko. If they jump, they're going to jump. Just don't freak out too much about it. Especially if you're standing up and they jump onto the floor, they will be okay. I have dropped, or not dropped, but I have had them jump off my hand onto the floor several times, and that's why I hold them on the bed now. Because if they jump, they're landing on something that's soft and cushioned, and it's not going to hurt them. Phoenix, where are you going? Another thing I will suggest when you're holding your crested gecko is to have your hair put up in a pony if you have long hair like me, or just tuck it into your shirt like I do, because they like to get in your hair and they'll get caught sometimes, and I would not want for my crested geckos to harm their eyes because your hair, if it were to slide across the eye and you're pulling on it, it could actually harm their eye, which they do have a film that goes over their eye that protects their eye from dust and stuff. So, I mean, it wouldn't directly harm them, but it could scratch that outer eyelid, and you wouldn't want that to happen. So, anyway, this kind of concludes my holding video, like tips and stuff. The main thing is just to be, confident in yourself, not be afraid. If they're going to jump, then you'll learn to see what that looks like. They'll bunch up their hind legs, and they'll kind of straighten themselves out in a streamlined position to where their whole body is kind of just straightened out. Oh, Rose is coming over here now. She's the cat that I don't have to worry too much about, because she's either scared of them half the time, or... Rose, move! Or she's just sitting there watching them, and she really wants to be in this video, apparently. Do you need attention? Okay. So anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end this here because Rose is interrupting. But like I said, you'll learn through trial and error. There are different ways to hold your crested gecko, but of course the best way is to just kind of let them hand walk. And now my cat's laying in my lap. And definitely be prepared to be pooped on, because that happens quite often. So anyway, guys, I hope that you found this video helpful, and hopefully, when you get your new crested gecko, you will definitely be able to bond with them, because that is a great feeling of having a relationship with them. Obviously, it's not like a love relationship, but it's just them feeling secure when you're holding them and being around them, and they're not afraid of you anymore. Of course, when you first get your crested gecko, you definitely want to let it acclimate to its surroundings for a week or so, without holding it very much, if at all, because especially if they're babies, or if they're juveniles or adults that have not been handled very much in their life, then they're going to be afraid. They may even flatten themselves against the floor of the tank if you open the door, and that's just another way they show they're frightened. Definitely watch their breathing when you're holding them. See how this is just kind of a regular breathing right here? It would be 3 times faster than that if they were afraid. So if your crested gecko is stressed or afraid, definitely don't hold it. Just put it back in its tank and let it calm down. Now with Ember, one time I did take her out when she was afraid, and she was throwing herself all over her tank because she was trying to get away from me. And I took her out and put her on my chest because that is one of her safe places she likes to be when I'm holding her. And she calmed down immediately, but unless you're sure of yourself, don't try to handle a crested gecko when it's afraid, because it may turn around and bite you. I have been bit before in the past. It doesn't hurt, but at the same time it kind of does. It feels like you're being pinched with little tiny teeth. So definitely respect their boundaries when they're afraid, and try not to hold them, because it'll just make it worse unless you are sure of yourself and you know how to handle the situation. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new about your crested gecko. And have a great rest of your day. If I can grab Blaze here. Have a great rest of your day.